Welcome. You're about to listen to a presentation by Karim Elgendy, Associate Director of the engineering firm Bureau Happold. The presentation of Karim was part of the program of the fourth panel organized by Çare, as part of the panel series Turkey and Syria after the earthquakes. Karim is an urban sustainability and climate expert based in London. He's an Associate Director at Bureau Happold, an Associate Fellow at Chatham House, the Royal Institute of International Affairs, and a non-resident scholar at the Middle East Institute in Washington. Karim is also the founder and coordinator of Carbone, an advocacy initiative promoting sustainability in cities of the Middle East and North Africa through research and communication. Karim's interests include urban sustainability and resilience, climate policy, energy transition, urban metabolism, and the circular economy. His current work focuses on the Middle East and North Africa region, especially around the Eastern Mediterranean and the Gulf, but his 2 decades of experience also span Europe, North America, and Sub-Saharan Africa. Karim has written tens of articles and publications. He has been invited to over 100 public speaking engagements and has delivered guest lectures at some of the world's leading universities. Karim is the recipient of the 2013 Green Building Entrepreneurship Award by the World Green Building Council, is a chartered member of the Royal Institute of British Architects, and has a master's degree from the University of California, Berkeley.
So my name is Karim Elgendy, and my interest lies mostly in urban sustainability, urban regeneration, which is why I'm honored to be here in this conversation, given the large-scale regeneration and reconstruction requirements that the southeast of Turkey faces in the aftermath of the earthquake. I will follow up from the points that were covered extensively by my colleague Ayşegül on the reconstruction needs for earthquake resilient construction to cover all the other points in addition to that, and also highlight the perils of only focusing on earthquake resilient construction and not all the other things that can be perhaps benefited from as we approach such a large scale reconstruction and regeneration. So where are we now? Well, we have obviously the damage, and the government in the back of that during the election campaign back in May announced that it will build 320,000 units by the end of 1 year, so by February 2024, and also will build 680 by February 2025. And these are incredible numbers to be built in 1 year. The former Minister for Environment, Urbanization, and Climate Change, Murat Kurum, went on TMC and then Turk back in May and said we already have 132 units under construction. However, as of the last August, and an estimate by Reuters, only 40,000 were nearly completed, and it doesn't look like we're going to get the full construction anyways. And on average, we have about 18% progress. That's since February to date, and the progress tends to be quite uneven. So places like Adıyaman have much lower progress in terms of reconstruction. It really varies. I'm not going to go into the why this is the case, but this is something that perhaps you can find out for yourselves. The way the reconstruction is structured is that all the reconstruction is handled by TOKİ, which is the Housing Development Administration, a federal agency or a national agency. And TOKİ normally manages about a quarter of this amount of construction every year. So for them, this is a major undertaking. And what they do is they send out tenders, and private contractors will take on those units of construction, and perhaps some of the public realm that goes with that to build those. And of course, all of that is covered by the ministry itself, the Ministry of Environment, Urbanization, and Climate Change, which takes on an overseeing role. What we have seen so far is an absolute laser focus on speed, which is very understandable given the fact that many people do find themselves living in container homes. But this pride in how fast we're going to build this so rapidly, is a little bit surprising given the nature of undertaking. The way regeneration works tends to be quite complicated. It's becoming increasingly complicated given the environmental and social factors that have gone into the redevelopment process globally around the world, and everything tends to take more time every year or every decade rather than less time. And also, given the scale of this, I mean, the government's own estimates is that this is going to cost 105 billion, definitely more than 100 billion, which is roughly 10% of national GDP. This is no small undertaking, and doing it quickly has inherent risks. So only focusing on earthquake reconstruction, on the fact that we will only build this so it doesn't fall down again with the next earthquake, has, in my view, risks that I want to highlight during this presentation. One is that if you build something that becomes less livable, so less livable is because it's too hot, because you didn't consider future climate due to climate change, for example, or that most of it floods. And we've seen in some parts where we did see flooding following the earthquake for completely unrelated reasons. So if this area is constructed in a way that doesn't consider stormwater management adequately, then it becomes unlivable as well. If it becomes too polluted because you didn't consider public transportation, or you didn't make it walkable, or depended too much on the cars, or you get too much pollution as a result, then that also becomes a risk of unlivability. And this unlivability means you ended up with assets that you've spent significant amount of money into becoming stranded assets. And that's, in my view, a risk that needs to be highlighted. The other thing is the missed opportunity, not only a risk, but also the missed opportunity. So there's a clear benefit in urban sustainability, urban resilience, and integrating those into large-scale reconstruction. And you don't want to miss out on that opportunity. If you're going to spend $100 billion on reconstruction, you should do that in the best way possible to ensure its long-term sustainability, ensure its long-term resilience, and its provision of livability and inclusivity for those who live in them. And in addition, the additional risk is that if you do this too quickly, you don't consult with the local population. You don't talk to people. Where are their jobs? Where do they live? How can we do this without disrupting their lives? Of course, their lives have been disrupted, but they can be put back together with some degree of normalcy. And if you build it without this stakeholder consultation, you could end up being disrupting some of those social networks, and also some of the livelihoods of people and the way they work. Just as a quick reminder, the southeast of Turkey faces a number of climate risks, which I wanted to put out front here, just for the avoidance of doubt. So southeast of Turkey will get higher temperatures. We know that for sure. Maybe 20% higher than the global average, depending on the climate change scenario. It will get more heat waves as a result of that. So the spikes during the summer will get worse. And we had seen a couple of years back when that also resulted in forest fires. It could get less rainfall. It will definitely get less rainfall, but it could get up to 40% less rainfall, which will affect agriculture. But the nature of that rainfall is that it will be longer droughts. It won't rain for longer, and then when it does rain, it will rain intensely. So you get longer droughts, but also more intense flooding. But overall, the amount of water that will come will be less than it used to be, perhaps significantly less than it used to be, and it will come in a less useful way. And ultimately, because of the coastal nature of some areas within the earthquake-affected region, it could also experience some sea level rise in some locations, which can have an impact. But I'm not going to go into this into great detail because most of those cities aren't coastal anyways. So what are the opportunities that perhaps reconstruction should consider? That, in my view, the models that we've seen from Turkey don't necessarily aspire towards. The opportunities, in my view, are primarily treating this redevelopment process in a holistic way. These aren't units. We're not building a number of units, we're building neighborhoods, we're building districts. And those districts come with a number of interlinked and interconnected urban systems that are best designed together, that are best designed to explore synergies, to explore opportunities of making the most of those urban systems, and also of making the most of sustainability and resilience. So this holistic approach to it, rather than individual asset approach, in my view, is one of the most critical opportunities that needs to be exploited. The damage being mostly in the historic cores, although not exclusively, the historic cores of those cities also, because these are the city centers, also has impacts on the whole city. So if you redevelop the city center, it regenerates the whole city or doesn't regenerate the whole city. It could hollow out the whole city. So it really is critical in how it can amplify the effect. If you develop a city center, it kind of raises questions as to what kind of city do you want around it. I mean, obviously the rest of the city could still be there, but do you create a more centralized city? Do you create a city where the city center is smaller, weaker, and then it becomes more polycentric or more like an urban village, as you see in some places, some cities around the world? Do you do a city center that's strong, dense, but also with other secondary hubs? So every one of those solutions, every one of those models has its advantages, has its weaknesses. And as you approach a city center, you kind of have to ask yourself, what does that mean for the wider city? But regardless, we have these fundamental principles. As you regenerate a city center after an earthquake, you have to ensure that your land use is efficient. You have to densify. I mean, this goes without saying. It has to be dense enough. And this density has to be of mixed use nature. So the mixed use planning, you get commercial, you get retail, you get offices, you get residential, plenty of it within the center district. And as you do that, those two things, the density and the mixed use of mixed uses within the city center, will lend themselves to transit-oriented development, a development that is driven around transportation. And that means you don't need cars as much. And as you know, many of those 5 provinces that have been affected are highly dependent on cars, and there isn't really a major infrastructure for public transportation. Perhaps Kahramanmaraş, I understand, has some plans, but by and large, the desire to move away from private car use will lend itself for that transit-oriented development, which has benefits all around, from air quality to energy efficiency and energy security, and improving health and well-being due to walkability and bikeability. And of course, with that, you'll get more spaces dedicated for green areas, which will support some of those goals I mentioned, but also provide additional benefits, which I will get to in a second. The other opportunity that reconstructing in a way that considers sustainability and resilience also provides is that it provides this ability to do integrated planning. It allows you to think of all the urban systems together as you approach it, not as units, but as you approach it as a whole district or a whole neighborhood. So you're able to think of not just the urban form, or the urban is in the buildings, but you're also able to think of energy networks, water networks, transportation, mobility in general networks, where are your materials coming in and how are they leaving as solid waste, allows you to think of stormwater and how it's integrated within all of that, allows you to think of food. Do you get food production within the city or not? Allows you to think of ecosystem integration and how do you make this more regenerative, and of course benefit from the ecosystem system values and benefits that provides to a city. Allows you to control the microclimate or improve the microclimate for current climate or also for future climate change, and allows you to also consider the integration of ICT systems, information and communication technology systems, and smart city technologies, as the case may be. But regardless of how you do it, integrating reliable and sustainable transportation is absolutely key. You're doing that and also ensuring walkability and bikeability are critical. Integrating green infrastructure in a way where you allow not just open spaces, but also trees and vegetation in different places and at different scales, allows you to manage heat. So it allows you to reduce urban heat islands, which increases temperatures in city cores, allows you to improve thermal comfort, which again comes in really useful given the climate change risks, allows you to bring biodiversity into the city. Again, that has additional benefits in terms of ecosystem functions, and also allows all these additional social and psychological benefits that green spaces and green infrastructure can produce. Certainly, integrating water efficiency measures. For example, if you have wastewater in the city, you'll be able, as you rebuild large scale, you'll be able to integrate a network that captures the wastewater, treats it, and reuses it within the city, say, for example, for irrigation. Not having the opportunity to rebuild is actually quite a difficult one. So integrating such a system in an existing fabric in a city that hasn't been damaged, or a city that isn't an existing city, is often prohibitively expensive. But having this opportunity and this moment in which you could do that and build in this energy, water efficiency into the system, is a great opportunity and shouldn't really be wasted, because otherwise you won't be able to achieve it later on. Likewise, if you're building dense neighborhoods, you could build in a district heating or a district cooling system, and that is much more efficient in terms of energy efficiency. Requires a central plant and lots of pipe work connecting to these individual buildings that you're about to build. And not considering that means you're reverting to individual air conditioning units or individual heating systems, which are less efficient. So all of these opportunities only happen if you consider things holistically and take the benefit, or take opportunity of this once in a lifetime opportunity. In this case, once in a few centuries opportunity. I say this with while considering that the fact that tens of thousands of people have died, but it is an opportunity for future generations. So in order to build this to last, in order to build this for future generations and not let down future generations, I think considering those things would be critical. And of course, on buildings, we can't ignore that. Building buildings that are ready for future climate. So not only in terms of the buildings themselves and passive design measures that can be integrated into them, and how you cool and ventilate those buildings in the most energy efficient way, but also in terms of large planning of the entire neighborhoods that facilitates that. So how do you lay out your roads? How do you align to solar geometry and the way the sun moves around your building? How do you align to air movement and allow air movement to the right level within your neighborhoods? All of these are critical in reducing the heat stress that can come, and which would be considered to be a measure for adapting of climate change. But also in terms of mitigating climate change in the first place, or taking a carbon lens into account, reducing energy demand is absolutely key, and it's also part of Turkish climate policy, which wants to aim for decarbonization entirely by 2053. Improving energy efficiency buildings is critical. In Turkey, buildings represent perhaps a higher share of energy use than the other countries. At the moment, it's around 33% of all energy use happens in buildings, and energy efficiency standards are not very high across the board. And even the target that was set for improving energy efficiency only aimed for EPC Class C. So aspiring to do a little bit better than this would certainly go a long way. And if it does, perhaps it could become an opportunity for becoming a test bed for the larger scale transformation of Turkish building stock. At the moment, the Kentsel Dönüşüm program has an aspiration of rebuilding 7.5 million dwellings by 2030. I don't personally think that would happen, but the program is still there, and the scale of reconstruction required for earthquake and other reasons is highly aspirational. It's an opportunity to not build back better, but build better in the first place. And if the success of reconstruction happens in the southeast of Turkey, can be then replicated at a larger scale, I think that would be an opportunity not to be missed. Another opportunity that, in my view, could help is Turkey leveraging the international support, international sympathy that it has gained following the earthquake. It has received billions from the EU and from the World Bank, and perhaps engaging with some of those lenders, other donors, and other partners across the world who are interested in or aligned at least on some of the climate policy goals, on some of the sustainability goals. That leveraging of these connections could help ensure that the redevelopment becomes more sustainable, more resilient, and more inclusive. And it won't only take the form of financial support, but it could also take the form of technical support, as the case may be. And I will stop here and thank you all very much.